Hey, it's Sammy for another episode of the I Do Music podcast, and our goal and our mission is to empower and educate musicians and artists worldwide. And on today's episode, we're talking to Chief Mastering Engineer KennyMixx, discussing working with Dr. Dre, what it takes to become a mastering engineer, and handling the business side of music. You are now tuned in to the I Do Music podcast. It's Sammy here sitting with the legendary Chief Mastering Engineer at Patchwerk Recording Studios, KennyMixx. What's up?
Hey, how you doing, guys? I'm doing good. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's here every day with me. I've started working with you when I came to Patchwerk. You were one of the first people that, gave me good talks and advice on getting through this industry, and a lot of stuff, so we had to sit you down for the podcast.
I pay her to say that. Nah.
So could you tell us, I guess, how you started in music? Did you go to school first, or what was how did you get your interest in becoming an engineer?
You know what? Believe it or not, I started off being an engineer when I didn't know I was being an engineer. So it actually started when I was a little kid. My mother used to do backup singing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've got a lot of family that's in the music industry. So even when I was small, like some type of way, how you go to a family reunion and one of your aunties, uncle says, your cousin, brother, sister, nieces, nephews, dogs related to whatever. So I'm actually related to like Sleepy that owns Organized Noise.
Oh, wow.
So when we were small, Sleepy and I, my cousin Rodney Miller, and a bunch of other people, and Doc and everybody, we would all go and play pinball machines and, do all kind of little stuff. But then coming up through school or whatever, I remember doing a lot of Organized Noise stuff in my homeboy's basement.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, that kind of took off from there. My dad was an audiophile. So as a child, you know how your parents tell you, don't touch this. So my dad had this nice big stereo system. So of course, don't touch that, Kenny. So he goes to work, But what I was doing was adjusting these nice EQs that he had to try to fix stuff, make it sound like whatever. And he would come home and go, I'm listening to that, but I need to do this, make the vocal sound better like that type of deal. So the interest was there since I was small.
Right.
And then in church, I was always with the musicians. So
Did you play an instrument?
A little bit.
Uh-huh.
Like I can't just get down, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was always with the musicians, and when they would go to the studios, they would always take me with them. So I would just be sitting at a SSL or consoles or whatever. I always sitting with the little engineer, but I was so young that they would tell me stuff like, hey, yeah, come here, young buck. Yeah, come sit right here, turn this knob right here and push this little fader. So I'll be doing stuff. It'd be muted. I didn't know, but the interest was there. So I was always listening. That's kind of where it kind of started, I guess.
So you went to school to become an engineer?
Yes and no. So I actually went to school for engineering. So I went to school and studied, of course, engineering, studied psychoacoustics. Also
psychoacoustics, is that what you said?
Psychoacoustics.
Okay, tell us more.
That is the study of how we hear sound and perceive sound.
Oh, that's deep.
Yeah. Then I also went in as a math major.
Yeah.
Which actually helped out a lot.
Really?
Because believe it or not, when you look at a console, your plugins, whatever it is, all you see is numbers. Just all numbers. But nobody kind of thinks of that. But the thing is, music is all numbers, all frequencies. So 1 + 1 = 2, not 5. So it's kind of weird, but that's the basis of all of it. I don't know where I'm going with this.
I just wanted to know if you felt school was even necessary, or if it's necessary for young people listening who have an interest in engineering. Is it necessary to go to school for it, or do you have to? I know here, the interns, they're usually, if not finished with school, in school for engineering. So just wanted to ask.
Yeah, it is important.
Yes. So why engineering and nothing else? I know you said you sat behind the boards and you had the interest in it, but why not be a producer or an artist or, anything else in the music industry? Why engineering?
Good question. I always have this analogy that when you wake up, you can either be Superman or Batman.
Okay.
So truth be told, when I first started, of course, I bought the keyboards and this and that and that, the drum machines. But when I produced music, it sounded crazy. It sounded like an old school Nintendo beat. So I was like,
I'm interested to hear that beat.
yeah, I was like, well, this ain't it.
Yeah.
And I remember, turning my little tracks to some artist, and he says, "Man, do you even listen to music?" So it was that day I was like, "Nah, I'm not a producer."
Yeah.
But then, like I do know how to mix. That's why I actually got the name from KennyMixx. But now as far as mastering goes, that actually migrated because I remember finishing this album. And
You remember which album it was?
it was Joe Blees. That's the artist. Artist's name is Joe Blees. I Am Mr. Freeze. That was the name of it. So I remember finishing this album, and we took it, to get mastered or whatever. And I remember sitting in the back on this couch, and the guy was just mastering the song, and I was sitting there like, ugh, it's not right. That don't sound right. It's not even close to right. And then I was thinking, why the hell is everything so loud in here? So after a while, I didn't do it on purpose, but after a while, I remember going up to where he was in the front, and I kept saying, I don't like the way you're doing these snares. And I said, that's too harsh. It's not even the right frequency. So I'm turning. I said, I don't know. I don't have your equipment, but I know what this is. So I started changing stuff. And then the same thing. I just kept changing everything, the whole song. Then he turns to me and says, you should be a mastering engineer. This sounds really good. So I remember sitting with that cat for a while. I was here in Atlanta. I remember sitting with him, for months or whatever, learning stuff. But after a while, I was researching and I found my teacher. His name is Larry Anthony. But Larry used to teach mastering to big mastering engineers. And when I called him, just on a whim, I called him. And the day that I called him, he said, well, I'm not going to teach mastering anymore. He said, I just flunked 31 people. I was like, 31? He said, yeah, damn near whole school. He said, because they're not understanding or whatever, right? So I said, well, when I get off of work, I want to come by there and I want to get my flunk on. So it was just, this long test or whatever. It was like, it's a whole engineering test. But I took the test and promise to God, believe it or not, I took the test and he didn't grade it while I was, there. He took it home and he called me and he was asking me something about a transducer. So I gave him the right answer and he says, well, you started writing that on your paper, but you didn't finish it. And I said, yeah, it's because I was going to go back to it. I didn't know what else was on page 36 or whatever, you know what I mean? But he said, if you had got this one finished on your paper, you would have been the only one in 17 years that would have aced this engineering test. So from there, he brought me on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, but the funny thing is, like I said, I'd already been studying my little mastering or whatever. And I remember the funny thing, he said, give me your best shot, master this song. Cool. So I got a little song and I mastered it, gave it to him. He was sitting there listening. And when the song went off, he took the CD and chucked it in the trash can. He said, I thought that was a Frisbee. So he said, everything you learned, throw that in the trash.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wow. So, that's where it was.
That's where it started.
Yeah, that's where it started.
That's dope. You've gained a lot of success over the years, working with some of the biggest names in the game. One of the things that we do when we give everyone a tour here, we show them like who you've worked with and who you are before we take them down to see you. What do you think you can attribute your success to so far?
A lot of hard work. A lot of hard work. Like some of the things that people don't see, I guess, about engineering. The most you really see is when we finish that big song or that big artist or you hit play and it's on the radio station. But the part of it you don't see is to stand up to 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning
Right.
because we have deadlines or so forth. So in other words, it's the type of deal to where in a commercial studio, we can't say we didn't finish it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication. And also behind the scenes, a lot of success came from just pressing play. And I got that from Dr. Dre. Yeah, Dre was actually in my room, and somebody else that was with him kept saying, well, who you work with? What's this? What's that? And before I could even say it, Dre, out of his own mouth, his words were, his words were, F that, Kenny, just press play. So I pressed play, and he kept saying, that's that sound. So a lot of it comes from a lot of dedication, even the way the rooms are tuned.
Mm-hmm.
Like I purposely tuned my room certain ways. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from.
Yeah. You mentioned working with Dr. Dre, and I kind of just mentioned I know how many people or the types of people that you have been fortunate enough to work with over the years.
Mm-hmm.
How did you go about building your clientele? I think for those listening, having a consistent client, someone that keeps coming back to you. People come to Patchwork not just for Patchwork, but for KennyMixx. Like they want to get their stuff mastered by you and mixed by a lot of the engineers we have here.
Right.
How did you go about building your clientele over the years?
Believe it or not, when I started, just like everybody that's just first grinding or whatever, it was a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, and a lot of hung up phones.
So you would reach out to people to say,
yeah, I tell you exactly what I did. It's old school now, but at that time, I remember driving to each county, and I would stop by like a gas station, Quick Trip, or whatever it was. But or even schools, libraries. But what I was doing was showing up and asking them if I can have their phone book. And it was like, sure, you know what I mean? So I remember coming home and I just had this car full of phone books. And I went home, sitting at my kitchen table, and I just flipped over to the music side.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually had like a Sharpie or whatever, and going through, and I called every studio in all of those damn books.
Wow.
Every last one of them.
And what would you say?
I would just call them and go, hey, I'm Kenny. I do mastering, on like a professional level. Can I master a song for you? Free. And if you don't like it, throw it in the trash. But at least give me feedback and go, hey, I didn't like it because, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would always ask them, like, if I'm going to do a free song, don't just give me something, let me just see what that is. Give me something that you can use.
Right.
So it just kind of trickled from there. And like I said, calling through a big list of phone books like that, you never know who you reach out and touch.
So what was your relationship to Patchwork? How did you end up here?
Believe it or not, I ended up here because I was actually working at Grand Hustle. So I was basically like their go-to mastering engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So I was at Grand Hustle like every day. Ray C was their top mix engineer. He's one of our engineers here as well. So from there, I remember, I think I was working on B.O.B.'s album. I'll be in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
That type. Yeah, so I was working on that. Submitting the stuff back and everything sounded good. And I remember Nico Salas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Muzzy, his brother. So we were all at the studio and Ray and everybody. So Nico says, hey man, Patchwork's looking for a mastering engineer. They're trying to build something, but it don't look right. So from there, I just put my little resume together. I already had a lot of credits, and I just drove up here, and submitted it in. And I think at that time, we were already building a mastering room,
Mm-hmm.
but even the owners looking at it like, I don't know if that's real mastering, so let's just double check. But anyway, long story short, I ended up here. We redesigned everything, bought all new equipment, set up purpose built for mastering. So now I'm the Chief Mastering Engineer here.
The only mastering engineer here. Is that's dope. I think I always had the question, or I always wondered, why don't you work outside of Patchwork in terms of like mixing or mastering sessions? Because just it's a lot of engineers in Atlanta. Not a lot of great engineers, but it's a lot of engineers in Atlanta, and a lot of times they work themselves different places.
Right.
But one thing about Patchwork that I've noticed, and especially for you, is that you work out of here.
Right.
That's like your second home down there. So what is it about Patchwork, and why is it that you're kind of almost exclusive to this studio?
Yeah, it's because as a mastering engineer, excuse me, we're usually stationary. In other words, you can take 5 top mastering engineers. We all have the same common goal to get at whatever sound. We're almost like producers where we can take the same equipment, but we work different.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, my room is just how I work to
Right.
make everything move smoother. But yeah, I get asked all the time, hey man, can you just do this at home or whatever. But truth be told, well, actually, I really have Patchwork at my house,
Mm-hmm.
and it has cobwebs on it. But I mean, we put in so many hours here. This room is purpose built that we have here, and it's just one of those type of deals to where I've dialed it in so much. I'm like, nah, that's the sound. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
So that's why I don't deviate somewhere else.
So let's talk about mastering, the process. What is it? Because most people don't really. I didn't for a long time understand the difference between mixing and mastering.
Right.
What is it that you're doing in layman's terms? Because you and Luke were over here talking. I didn't know what y'all was talking about.
Right.
But in layman's terms, like, what is it that you're doing that the mixing engineer cannot do? And why is it important to have mastering done to a song or a project?
Right. So let me back up just a little bit.
Sure.
Because I get asked that question all the time, and I get it because the general public, they may not know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times when I answer it back, if I dumb down what I do, it just helps the plague of
It's not essential.
right. Oh, I can master it myself.
Right.
Because the only parts that they get out of it are, it just makes stuff loud. So, but they're missing all of the real part of mastering. So essentially, so I'll just kind of say it out what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you guys don't understand what that is, and we got some homework, right? So let me see. I'm looking at the camera, so this is actually my left. All right. So if we're looking at your speakers, right? Sorry, if we're looking at your speakers. Then on your left side, and on this other right side here, this speaker is actually out of phase with this speaker. So I'll try to break it down a little bit. So in other words, your ears are like that as well. Your right ear is out of phase, your left ear. So what happens is, number-wise, a +1 and a -1, when you put them together, equals what? 0.
0.
They cancel out. So that's what happens with your speakers. So what I'm getting at is, on the true side of mastering, I don't deal with volumes. Never have. On the true side of it, I deal with what's called phase and time alignment.
Mm-hmm.
I said, yeah, we can get to that a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, tell us about the different types of mastering as well, because I know it's different types of mastering. It's not
Right.
it's just mastering. We're turning up some music, and now you got a finished project.
Right. Well, believe it or not, a lot of the mastering that's like mainstream that people know about, the general public, it's really called volume optimization.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Volume optimization deals with exactly like how it kind of sounds, just volumes. So it's a process to make stuff loud, quick, like loud and brighter, quick or whatever. But the only problem with that is, like, it does have its place in the industry, so I don't knock it. But the only problem is when you get a nice mix, the purpose of it is not just to make it loud, because we can do that at home. The purpose of it is to make it to where those sounds pop out of the speaker like a 3D bubble, and it draws an image out everywhere around you, like I don't know, like a Michael Jackson song or something. You know what I mean? But you can't do that with just volumes.
So what about phase alignment? What's the difference between those two?
Right.
Volume optimization and phase alignment. Tell us what phase alignment is.
Right. So that gets back to,
which is what you do, right?
Right. So that gets back to what I was talking about with the speaker deal. So in other words, in your small studio, let's just say, you got a speaker here, you got a speaker here, whatever. In a small studio, and when you play the songs back, you don't necessarily know how bad it really sounds until you get out to, let's say, a big arena. You're doing a big event. So now you're doing this big event, and let's just say TLC, you're opening up for them or something. There still comes out sounding all great and awesome, hear all the vocals, whatever. But then you come on right behind them, and you sound like with a lot of bass, and that's because the speakers are canceling each other. And so you have to remember that when I'm looking at like you on the center stage, if that stuff is canceling, I'm almost erasing you off the stage.
Right.
And that's the biggest difference between the two.
Gotcha. You've, aside from the actual art of mastering, you are very adamant about teaching artists about all it is that they need to do on the business side of music, right? Very adamant about it. That's one of the first conversations that we had. So what are some ways that what are some things that you make artists aware of, aside from the need, the value of mastering, the value of getting your project right, but after that?
Well, one, like you just asked, I'm very adamant about it. And that actually really kicked in when I had done some songs for Prince. And I remember sitting at home, I was sitting there eating, just watching the TV. But at that time, he had cut a slave inside of his face and his hair.
He cut
the
words?
Shaved it. Yeah, shaved the word slave.
Oh, wow.
And his beard.
I don't know if I saw that one.
Yeah, and he kept saying that he didn't own the rights to his masters.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But what that means is that most people look at it and go, well, I do have the rights to my masters because I got it mastered and here's the CD. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking more about who owns the rights to it, or what was the splits cut up between it. You know what I mean? So anyway, long story short, so I was sitting there looking at that, and I was like, damn, I did some of those songs, you know what I mean? So I helped. I'm doing this to them, you know what I mean? That type of deal. So, just after that, I would just always try to help artists, be aware that, hey, it's almost damn near, if you can see it or if you can hear it, you get paid from it. But especially on the urban markets, it's almost monkey see, monkey do. So a lot of times we just say, well, she's doing that, he's doing that, she's doing that, he's doing that, so I'm going to do it too.
Yeah.
Whether it's a pitfall or not. So that's why I've been always just adamant about, hey, know the business side of what you're doing.
So what are some ways that artists can actually monetize off of their music?
You could actually, the first common goal is, one, like I said, own those masters. It's a process that when I'm mastering your songs, I actually encode and embed everything in your metadata so you can own the rights to it. But it has to go a step farther than that. Once I encode and embed your masters from there, it has to be registered back to your company.
What even in terms of like artists trying to get their music played on the radio and into like, sending it out to different press or media, into the media in general, what are some things they need to do before that? You talked about digital encoding,
right,
which for those listening is, getting the codes on your song, right? Like it's like a barcode almost. You described to me as like a product.
Right.
Product code.
Right. So one, like you just said, one is a UPC code. Now your UPC, aka barcode, that's going to be like when you press up CDs or something, that you're going to sell your merch or whatever, right? So a lot of times, for some reason, we get clients that's always trying to beat the system. So they're trying to fit street into corporate, and it doesn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So in other words, it's either you did it right or you did it wrong. So with the UPC, a lot of times we get some clients that go, well, I don't want a UPC because I'm not pressing CDs. And I always have to explain to them, just because you're not pressing CDs, what about the guy that just copied your song and pressing CDs up in some other state with his little duffel bag?
Mm-hmm.
Now, he owns your hard copies, or in a whole nother country. You know what I
Right.
mean? And then the other one is actually the ISRC code. So that code is actually also embedded into the metadata. And that's one that that's a code that's unique now, that as a mastering engineer, when it's done correctly, if let's say you did a song and the song's called I Love You, then I take your song and I change the title to I Hate You, then the money is still going to track back to your company if it's done correctly.
Got you.
Right.
So we for one offer those services, but they have to have these things prior to coming to you, or like prior to you finishing the song.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So code-wise, you can have your own ISRC code, own UPC codes. But like I said, a lot of times people try to beat the system. So I guess I just say it like this: you can't use your homeboy's code.
Right.
I see that all the time where somebody go, oh, well, man, I got codes. You can just use one of my codes. But same thing.
So it's under their name.
Right. Now they own your masters. And the same thing with video. If you use my code, I own your videos. And yes, video is supposed to be coded as well. Remember, like what I said, if you can see it, if you can hear it. And then from there, on that side, that's really about it.
And tell us about like these other companies, because these are all other services that I've heard of that that we do here, but like BDS, Media Base, and Sound Exchange.
Right.
What are those companies? I'm sure as an artist you've probably heard it, you just don't know what they mean. And why do you have to have?
Right. So that's very important. So let's just say, for instance, we'll just take BDS. So like your BDS, they're gonna track all your radio spins type of deal. And then you have Media Base. Your Media Base, they're gonna also track everything. That's like that's like a central hub to say this got played this many times in California. It got played this many times over here. That type of deal.
Gotcha.
And then you have like Sound Exchange. That one is important also. That's going to be like XM radio, cable TV, networks, that type of deal. So they'll collect from there.
Gotcha.
But also you have to remember that even though that stuff is out there, those companies collect, no money go anywhere until it's all registered back to your company.
Gotcha. So this is all about collecting your coin.
Right.
And this is an important part, so I hope y'all are paying attention to that specifically. I also wanted to talk about, you talked a lot about fine-tuning your room. And, obviously we're not in your room right now, but tell us about how you have, like, if you could paint a picture of how your room is set up and why it's set up the way it is.
Right. So, yeah, like you said, a mastering room is totally different from a mixing room. It's almost always described as a music microscope.
Okay.
So there are even some parts of that room that help the tuning that you don't necessarily just see physically. And one of them is I use wire whirl cabling. So cables do make a difference in some systems, some maybe not or whatever. But in my system, they make a huge difference. But the point is, a mastering room, when you press play in a mastering room, it's not as fun as pressing play in a mixing room.
Why is that?
And that's because in the mix room, Like both rooms can get loud, but in the mixing room, the environment is set up to where you have a little bit more bass and stuff like that, so you can just feel what you're kind of doing type of deal. But in the mastering room, everything is mostly kind of flat, kind of bland, because what happens is I need to have my room like a surgical knife, like a little microscope. So, in other words, if I had my room hyped up, then if I'm hearing a lot of bass and the mix engineer's hearing a lot of bass, then I'm not going to put the correct amount of bass back in your song.
Right.
If that make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also the speakers are always a little bit different. Typically, you don't use a mixing speaker in a mastering situation type of deal. So speakers are different. I use JBL Master Reference M2s. Very expensive speakers, even like the amps. The amps are different. The amps that I use are actually, believe it or not, are from Crown. But the amps by themselves are $12,500 a piece. But they're set up for the sound quality.
Right. Right.
And then one of the other things, like this is something that it helps out a lot, but it's not really talked about. The noise floor, meaning when a song is playing and then it kind of just stops playing, the noise floor is like real low in a mastering room. And the purpose of that is because when you guys are mixing or producing or whatever, truth be told, let's just say, for instance, if you have the typical noise floor, just say like in your home studio or whatever, then if you put your music and you click on 24 bits, a lot of times people go, I don't hear the difference between 24, 32, or 16.
Yeah.
Right? Excuse me, you engineers probably know what I'm talking about as well. But what happens when you have a super low noise floor, then now you actually hear all the extra detail. Whereas if you have a normal noise floor, if you put on 24 bits, you're actually recording 16 bits of noise and 8 bits of audio. And that puts it back at, hello, my name is Barbie.
You spoke about having the JBL speakers, and I think you mentioned one other company, but what'd you say?
Wire World.
Cables. Yeah, cables. You have a ton of you've gained a lot of sponsorships and endorsements. You've partnered with other companies. How is this possible for you, and is it something that's attainable for other people, other engineers that are in your line of work?
On my end, a lot of sponsors, well, believe it or not, so like you guys know some of the sponsors that I have, but I was going to say the companies that make the gear that we use, they press play also. So what was happening was they just kind of did a snapshot of the markets that we're in type of deal, and it's like, hey, we got songs from this guy, this, but every time we hit play on this guy, it has that sound. So sometimes I will get contacted, like, hey, we're trying to help get our stuff out in the urban markets, but we need to be represented by a correct sound. So they would hit me and go, hey, we'd love for you to rep us as an ambassador. And then that's just how it kind of starts and just kind of trickles down from there. But also, I guess, getting some sponsorship, for other engineers type of deal. It can't be, it's not a deal to where you just look at a name brand that you just, I wish I had this piece of gear. I wish I had this keyboard or whatever. You can't just go, I'm going to call them and ask them to cut me a check. It doesn't work like that. In other words, it's a type of deal to where scratch my back or scratch your back.
Right.
So even with sponsors sometime like that, preferably it has to be something that you already use. If you use AKG headphones or microphones or whatever all the time, then it wouldn't make too much sense to call another company and go, hey, send me your stuff. They go, oh yeah, cool. So what do you use? I use their stuff.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, that does make sense. Brand alignment, definitely. Why? Also, just like building relationships with these companies, and you've built like not only relationships with your clients, but with these major like brands and companies. Why do you think that's important when building your business and your personal brand, KennyMixx?
That's actually important because it goes hand in hand. Like me as a top engineer, when let's just say I do a spotlight for them, or a commercial, banner, whatever it is, not only does that help me in the studio that I'm in, but it also helps them as a company to sell product. But it can't, I'm that guy that's if I don't like it, then I won't use it.
Right.
So there's a lot of companies that actually have hit me and said, hey, man, use our stuff. And I press play on and go, nah.
Yeah.
I've even gotten into arguments with a company before. With the owners and some of their engineers. Yeah, so I remember, I'm not going to say the name, but they sent me these plugins, and they were wanting me to endorse the mastering stuff that they were doing. So they sent everything to me, and I hit play on it, and I was like, whoa, this thing sounds horrible, And it's like, no, it doesn't. It's the something, the whatever version, whatever. But I kept saying, nah, dude. I said, man, I just hit play. I didn't touch anything, and it's done changed my whole damn song. So it got to the point to where I was like, well, hey, if you fly down here and you don't hear what I hear, I'll endorse, put my name on it or whatever. So they actually flew here, sat in my room. I pulled up what was correct, and I pulled their stuff up, and I hit play. And they even said, oh, shit.
Right.
I was like, oh, I don't know what to tell you. If you didn't know it sounded like that, then what the hell are you selling all these people?
Right. Yeah. That's important. And I wanted to ask you, too, because you mentioned the pricing of some of those speakers. And I was taken away because I don't even know if I've seen that much money. But I think a lot of people are not intimidated by the cost of getting your project like done correctly, right? Because you have to pay for studio time to record, and you have to pay the mix engineer plus their time, and just for the service, and then on top of that, the mastering. Do you feel like the cost of or do you even feel like it's at the right value for what you're doing? Both mixing and mastering, like the cost of it.
Right. Well, nowadays, believe it or not, the cost of mixing and mastering have gone down like tremendously.
Yeah.
And it's only because everybody says they record, mix, and master now.
Right.
But even whether they're doing it and they understand what they're doing or they don't understand what they're doing, either way, everybody says that they do it. So right now we're in a time zone to where most people haven't paid for a lot of things they do. Like the average young kid has probably never paid for music. So when you go to them and go, hey man, this song is $1, and they go, why? So
that's true.
So it makes it to where the value looks crazy or sounds crazy. Like $1, you crazy?
Right.
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 So I think it's a type of deal that's like that. But then again, on the flip side of that coin, there's also, for every person that says no, there's always a person that says yes. For every, I don't know, Honda sold, there's a Ferrari sold somewhere. That type of deal. So the value is still there because once you invest in yourself and you hit play, you finally go, damn, all this time, that's what I was trying. Right.
All this time you've been doing it wrong. You got to come get the quality. Yeah, I think sometimes we don't understand until we actually been put in the position to hear the difference, right? So another thing that I wanted to ask you is like, why do you think that people continue coming to you, being that there are other people that say, they do mastering and that they do mixing and everything? Why do people continue to come to you versus anybody else that they could come to?
I think Well, like any job, it's a relationship type of deal. So everybody that comes back to me, we're almost like friends. You know what I mean? So when we sit in the rooms, we talk together. Like every project that I do, no matter who it is, at that moment, that is that star. And they'll tell you, any of them that's worked with me, and say, hey man, when we went into a session with Kenny, that's ride or die. He's trying to help us figure out how to make our money, how to get this, how to correct that, what should something be. Even to the point to where sometimes I get songs and I have to like turn them down, like, hey, I can't master this. But it's not a thing where I go, I can't master your song, get out of here.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. So what happens a lot of times, if I can't master the song, I'm like, hey, get me in touch with your engineer.
Yeah.
And then I'll talk to he or she on the phone and go, hey, I just need some help. Here's some tidbits. I'm just kind of hearing this. Let's try to touch this up. And then if they can't do it, or even sometimes I get songs to where they just say, oh, well, I didn't know, man. I didn't, I sent you a version that had something on the output bus that I tried to master or whatever. And I say, no, take that off. I've got better purpose-built equipment that I can help get your sound back. So I think it's just a relationship thing. Then after a while, I find out a lot of my clients, where they used to always want to try to come and sit in. After a while, they kind of like, Kenny, you know what I'm doing. You know the sound I like. Run with it.
Right.
And everything will be taken care of.
Right. So people don't even have to sit in really anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So I want to ask you if you could speak on, because you're, for one, you have the Grammy engineer on your sleeve that he wears on his T-shirt, and then you've worked with several projects that have received Grammys, right? Which projects could you share with us that are worth revisiting? I'm sure all of them.
Well, no, I would say the one that like most recent would be like the one we did with Faith Evans. That was R&B Divas. Yeah. And that was actually kind of cool because nobody expected it. Nobody knew. They were all here, did a little thing or whatever. And I think that was actually a cool one because just listening to those ladies sing, and it's a type of deal to where, like nowadays, the engineers, they have to go into overdrive. In other words, we do a lot of fixing.
Yeah. Versus the talent,
Right, right. But I get it. Even though I have to do a lot of fixing, I'm not going to say that's bad because a lot of times people have very, very good ideas, and there's been a lot of great songs that come out, and that's our jobs, to help you, come out with that vision. But just to sit back and listen to those ladies sing was like, wow.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. So I wanted to ask you, in the same token or in the same breath, like credits. Obviously, we're in a digital space where we don't see credits. It's hard to know who did this and who was a part of who played this instrument on the song. It's hard to find that.
Right.
How do you feel about credits today? And do you think that people value your work and value what you're doing because they can't even maybe
Right.
not be able to find it?
Right. That's actually a good question. And you're right. It used to be where you would buy an album and you couldn't wait to pop it open, read the credits, who did this, who did that. But nowadays, you don't even see a credit on a single, and it is kind of odd, It gets discouraging sometimes to where you go, we as engineers, we put in crazy hours with this project. Artists call us over and over and over. We're doing this, doing that, just to release it, and everybody's on there except for the engineer. And it's only really because, like I said, it's the monkey see, monkey do, to where it's always cool to put the producer, but it's not cool to put the engineer because nobody made that cool yet. So it's one of those type of deals. So, but there is one thing that Curtis and I, the owner of Patchwork, so Curtis and I, we just sat one day and was like, you know what? There's a disconnect nowadays between like credits and who were doing these songs. It used to be to where I knew every mix engineer of songs that I did, and I knew their sound and everything. But now there's so many mix engineers, I don't even know who they are.
Right.
So
right.
some of them I can say, oh man, this sounds good, but who did it?
Right.
So I think it's a cultural thing to where things are being watered down because there's so many people that's getting into the music industry without doing their business that they won't even put their names. And it's odd, you know. So, excuse me. But I was going to say what I'm getting back to is, so Curtis comes up with this good idea. He said, "Well, Kenny, we need to do a every first Friday of the month. We're going to get together, and we're going to bring in some of the new and upcoming mix engineers."
That's dope. Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to sit in with them and it doesn't even matter if you submitted songs to me. I'm sorry, submitted songs to me where they sounded really good or they didn't sound good at all. The purpose of this is to get it in and get us all on the same page.
Right.
Because every engineer out there, myself included, I never claim to be the smartest person in the room. So I'm still always learning. So the same thing I found out, some of the mix engineers have always been like, well, yeah, I want my song to sound better. I just don't know what to do.
Right.
Nobody's ever said anything to me. So that's the purpose of the First Friday deal.
That's dope. So you all will be basically establishing like a community space or a space for engineers. Almost. That's dope. And it will be just one engineer and yourself, or it'll be like...
Well, it'll be... so right now I want to try to start it kind of small, where it's more intimate. So maybe like 8 to 10 mix engineers
with
at
you.
one time.
Okay, gotcha.
Me.
Cool. That sounds dope. That's a good idea to create a space for a community for the engineers. I think a lot of times we've not forget about y'all. We appreciate y'all, but sometimes we forget. We don't. We need that conversation going too.
Right.
Which is why the engineering podcast that y'all have with Patchwork is dope too. The Engineers Corner, right?
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, that's dope. So, you spoke about a lot of artists that you've worked with already, legendary artists from Prince to Dr. Dre, Faith Evans, and that list goes on and on and on. But I wanted to ask you, in today, 2017, what excites you with a lot of the music being extremely monotonous? What excites you about doing your job every day? Like, you come in here Monday through Friday, and you come in the morning, early afternoon, and stay all the way until nighttime. How can you?
How?
How?
Right?
Because you know what's on the radio. You know what we're listening to, and it's very monotonous. So
Right.
I asked that.
It is. Well, first of all, believe it or not, technically, doctors say that we are all bipolar.
Okay.
But anyway, where I'm going with that is...
Yeah, I'm like, well, what does that mean about me?
Well, when I say all, I mean like engineers.
Gotcha. Oh, okay, gotcha.
So they say that all engineers are bipolar. We're not normal.
Okay.
In other words, it's not normal to come in the morning, working on something, all the way to the next morning, go to sleep for 2 hours and pop back up and then do the same thing. That's like bipolar as hell. But what excites me, what I'm getting at with that is, when I come to work every day, even though a lot of songs technically sound the same from my standpoint, everything is always different. It's not like, like if you go to like your normal 9-to-5 job and you go there, and I don't care if you're making trash cans, you just push the same button and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as a master engineer, mine is just always different. I'm always trying to figure out this puzzle, So that's what's kind of exciting about it. And it's that, and then it's also because the music is always evolving into something different. Whether it's new plugins, different speakers, different this, different that,
right?
Techniques. So it's always different, but don't get it twisted, because this is what I hear a lot of times too. Well, that engineer, that's old school. He don't know what he doing. This the new stuff, right? But what people fail to realize is that, like I said in the beginning, if you look at that console or your equipment, whatever you're using, it's all numbers.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
The physics of music is not going to change. A keyboard has the same keys on it. It's not going to change.
Right.
So even though the music style is different, the way that you process it is going to always be the same.
Well, I guess on a personal standpoint, I'm asking because you have worked with artists, and it's still to this day, I'm not saying that all artists are, not musicians, but you've worked with true musicians who understood, like we've had conversations about funk and like just music, and just sitting in a room working on certain things that may not be those things anymore in 2017. That's what I want to know. Like, how does that make you feel today? Like, how does it make you feel working on those things?
Right. So, believe it or not, on my end as a mastering engineer, it hasn't changed.
Okay.
So that's why I was saying, like, the music style has changed,
Yeah.
but the way I have to process anything you play on that keyboard, or drum machine, or Fruit Loops, or whatever, has to be processed the same.
Mm-hmm.
It all has to be time aligned the same. As long as we still listen to speakers as a medium of listening to music, it has to be the same.
And I want to ask, as technology advances, how will it affect engineering, or how has it affected engineering for you?
On my end, it's a deal to where technology is going to always evolve. So it's not something where you can just jump in and go, I hate my life, I'm going to stop this, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a deal to where when somebody does their music, are they into the music for the quick, or just want the money right now, or are they into it because they want the real quality? So in other words, it's this type of scenario to where I look at technology as it is, at least 217 right now, as the same analogy of saying, this is a mannequin, and it looks just like Sammy, but you're the real Sammy.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a big difference.
Right.
So a lot of technologies nowadays is like, hey, take this and just upload it, run your stuff through it, and it's mastered. It's just like the real thing, or it's just like the real mix, but it's the same analogy. That's a wax dummy.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like Sammy or whatever, but it's just not.
Yeah.
So that's where kind of technology is today. But it's also one of those type of deals where I said, for every type of this car that's sold, there's also another different type of car that's sold.
Right.
So whether you want to do your music always correctly, or a lot of times some people go, oh, that's just good enough. But I don't worry about that client with that's just good enough, because the good enough client is also the client that says, I don't care about my music business. I want to be seen and be heard. I just want to get out there.
That's a good one.
So that's why you have like some artists that are not signed, not on labels, don't have mixtapes and stuff, not on all these other social media places that other people throwing stuff out like robots, but they're making more money than signed artists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all better get at Kenny to get it done the right way. Listen, I do want to ask another thing, because you're a man of many stories. Kenny likes to talk. He likes to talk to you about
I never shut up.
his experiences and just all the things that you've seen over the years. So could you share with or revisit an experience from your career that's worth revisiting, something that you just will never forget? Like, wow, I can't believe that happened. I'm sure there are a few, but one of your favorites.
What is one of my favorites? Yeah, it is a lot of strange ones.
Not strange.
I think, I would have to, I would have to go back to what I just said a few minutes ago.
About
Um,
Faith?
not when I said when Dr. Dre was in my room.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we're all in my room, whatever. We're just talking, whatever. But when Dre said, "Yo, Kenny, that's that sound," and he even said out his own mouth, like, "Yo, I wish you were doing my Detox album." He said, "This sounds better than my whole album that I have." That was my wow moment.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, put that on tape. Damn, where's my phone at? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, so I guess in my whole career, that was one that hit me like,
Yeah.
damn.
That's what's up. That's dope. That's dope. I mean, you came in here and talked about you were sitting in the Jazzy Faye chair. Let's talk about what you have done for, or how you've been a part of Atlanta, starting with Grand Hustle as their mastering engineer. And you're a native.
Mm-hmm.
You're from Atlanta.
Born and raised.
Yeah. So just what you've done for the culture of Atlanta, working with artists coming right from the crunk era to, Dungeon Family, Goody Mob days. Yeah, all of that.
Well, I guess, I've done so many songs. It actually turned to a thing to where a lot of stuff was happening that I wasn't even aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Just people hitting me back like, "Yo, Kenny, that's that sound." At one time, one of our engineers, like Ray C again, he was known as the sound of Miami.
Mm.
That's all those Trick Daddy records and Trina and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember when I got with him and he was doing this thing and I was doing my thing, we had a sound to where the labels had called us Ray C KennyMixx Unstoppable Sound.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, and I didn't know that, but that's what was going around the labels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a type of deal that, at least in Atlanta, before I knew it, I had done so many freaking records. Because on my end, I just come in, I just do my little thing every day. Just do this records. But it got to the point that so many were out there that I would run into people in the streets and they would tell me, because I never really know how my stuff sounds outside of here unless I go to the club or I get in my car and I play it with my system or whatever. But when I get clients that come back to me that I don't even know, they would go, "Yo, Kenny, you just got that sound. It's just like that warm, smooth sound." And it's really because that is the key to music.
Mm-hmm.
A good sound shouldn't be you press play and it just sounds like all hi-hats, and it shouldn't be, I just want this bass to hit. And then, because a lot of times I hear people in a mix session, when they go, "Yo, man, turn the bass up some more. That thing need to just be knocking."
Yeah.
But that's the wrong place to do that. That's on my end.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to knock. But if you have a mix file, which is, I'm going to do this little natural, like a little small, I don't know if you guys can see that. But I'm doing my hand like this, like a small waveform.
Mm-hmm.
And that little small waveform has that much bass in it. Then once I get into mastering, I try to turn it up. Mm-hmm. Now the same bass was already here is now here. Mm-hmm. And it's just too much overkill.
Right.
Yeah.
So another thing that I just had my thought. And
that's because I talk too much.
No, it's
you
not.
asking one question, I'm talking about some others.
No. Because my question probably don't have nothing to do with that. That's why. But I wanted to ask you something in regards to, yes, your reputation, because that's what you said of how we've continued talking about it. But why is your reputation a big thing in this line of work? Obviously, you said even A&Rs were going around saying that you and Ray C were uncontrollable sound, right? Is that, did I quote you right?
Unstoppable.
Uncontrollable.
Yeah.
Unstoppable sound. What is it about, or why is your reputation a huge deal in this industry? And why specifically for you it's helped you in getting more and more credit?
I think one, like the reputation side, just one, as a person, you can't be let me how I answer this. Let me back it up. So I'm from the South, from Atlanta. Mm-hmm. You guys probably say, "Well, damn, he's country as hell." I hear it in his voice. But I'm from here, but the way I was raised was I'm always the guy that I'm a hugger. Like, hey, how you doing? You know, you hungry? Yeah, come on, eat. You know what I mean? That type of deal. And I think that kind of helps and it rubs off with my clients because my clients to me, they're like the stars. I'm trying to go to the Grammys with all of them. You know, so it's a reputation thing that's like that because on my end, as a mastering engineer, I'm the last person to actually touch your record. So that also means I'm the one that gets blamed for everything. So there's been a few records out there that are going out, and of course I get blamed for it. So sometimes what I'm getting at is if the record isn't from the beginning produced right, and it's just a 2-track that's turned up loud, and the producer goes, yeah, that's my sound, that's how I want to do it. Then the recording engineer gets it, and he or she is trying to record vocals on it. They have to turn it down and try to make it fit into their Pro Tools. Excuse me. And then the mix engineer gets that, and that's all hyped up, and they're trying to turn that down again to put whatever they got to get to it. And then sometimes by the time I get it, I go, yo, I don't have any headroom. I can't do anything with this song. And then sometimes I get asked, yo, you just have to. We don't have the session anymore. The files are corrupted, or we lost the hard drive, whatever the case is. Then I get forced into a corner where I have to do that song. But the ingredients have already been tainted. It's already salt in the Kool-Aid. So now when it gets out to the club, and then they get like, man, it didn't sound like Chris Brown. No, it didn't. But they're not going to say, I fucked it up in the beginning.
Right.
I messed this up. And then we knew that wasn't right. Yeah, and it was an MP3. We already knew it was distorted. They're going to go, Kenny mastered it.
Right.
Yeah, so it is a touchy reputation thing where I'm going to have to kind of watch what I do. And that's why sometimes I have to reject certain songs.
Project.
But try to help them fix it.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're a very passionate person. You can hear in a lot of your responses, and just in general, the type of person that you are, that I know you are. I want to know, and we've asked this question to other people on the podcast, but I want to know specifically from you if you feel like the music industry loves you as much as you love it.
No.
No. You don't think they value you or value your work for what it is?
I think that I'm saying no because everything is like super fast paced now, but a lot of the decisions are made by so many people that don't care.
Yeah.
And that's also why, like, you guys have probably heard on radio stations or whatever, you can press play and go, how in the hell did this raggedy-ass song get on the radio, and why the fuck is it so damn popular? And that's because it's a political thing.
Yeah.
And that's also why I've been the advocate of the independent artists, because every major artist that's ever come through here was independent at one time.
Right.
All of them. So that's why I try to ride or die with a lot of the independents. But yes, I do a lot of signed artists too. But what I found out, just been like a little pattern. I kind of keep up with little patterns or whatever, right? What I found out is that not all of them, but a lot of times, a lot of signed artists will get lazy sometimes, and they go, "Well, I'm so and so, I'm KennyMixx, so I don't need to master no more," whatever. So the music sounds like that now.
Yeah.
So it's more of a, I'm so and so, I'll come to the studio and I'm gonna party, turn up, or whatever, and then try to do music in the last 20 minutes. Whereas the average at-home artist is like, yo,
this is my time to grind.
It's my time to grind.
Yeah.
I want that real sound. So they come here and they're working. So it's a little weird like that. I can't really explain it.
I feel it.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about developing relationships with the mix engineers and the community locally here in Atlanta. But also, I want to, I guess, get your perspective on the difference in working with engineers, I guess, maybe 10 plus years ago, and being able to have a conversation with these people because you know them, and even if you didn't, just being able to pick up the phone and talk to them, versus today, how that conversation is.
That's a good question. Believe it or not, it's a lot different now. Whereas back in the days, the mix engineer wanted to have a personal relationship with the mastering engineer. That's how we came out with a very good sound. So like back in the day, like I said, I knew the engineers, and everybody was taking time while they were doing the mixes. So like an average mix would take a whole day or sometimes 2 days to do a nice mix. But it was at that time to where it could come to mastering, and that mix engineer respected the master engineer enough to say, hey, I did all the passes, but I also did a lot of extra passes with the vocals turned up or turned down or whatever. What does it sound like? Do I need to change this or do we need to change that? And we would have that conversation. And clients sometimes wouldn't even know, but that was just between us, and we would do it. Nowadays, now that the credits aren't really there, or you don't know really who's doing a lot of this stuff. So now just imagine I'm calling you and you don't know me, and I'm like, hey man, this is wrong, or this is this and this is that. The difference nowadays is that everybody has their own home studio. But a lot of times when they have their home studios, they're not tuning the rooms. Whereas back in the days, a top engineer was always in a commercial tuned room. Nowadays, of course, everybody's at home, which is fine, but they haven't taken the extra steps to actually tune their process, let alone really dive in and know what they're doing. So now when I make this cold call, it's like the first thing I get kicked back with is, but I bought this, I got this equipment, I bought this, and I got these speakers, I bought this. And I go, hold on, it's nothing to do with that. We're talking about what you did using that.
Right.
So nowadays, it's almost like a lot of new engineers get offended.
And they're on the defense, yeah.
Right, they're on the defense. And that's not what the purpose of it is. The purpose of it is, I'm hearing your song, I know how to help you make it sound better. And if you can help me help you, we're good.
Right.
That's the biggest difference.
So we talked about you and Curtis doing this First Fridays thing, so where mixed engineers would have an opportunity to come in with you and also just to network with each other so everybody kind of knows one another. But aside from that, are you open to having those conversations with mixed engineers, like one-on-one?
Right.
Yeah.
So, well, believe it or not, I do that also.
Okay.
So we have like consultations.
Yeah.
So you can book like a 1 hour consultation with me, like one-on-one. It's $75 an hour.
Okay.
But the cool thing about that is that even though it's one-on-one, you can come in and bring me your mix, and then we'll sit down and I can actually analyze it, and I can go over it. These frequencies are off, the vocals are this, or maybe it sounds good, whatever the case is. You can get a better understanding of what we're doing collectively together.
Gotcha.
Before we throw it out into the public.
Yeah, so you got Mr. KennyMixx out here teaching, sharing his knowledge, and y'all acting like y'all not receptive. That's crazy that folks be acting like that.
Yeah.
Don't do my man like that. Nah, I think that's a great thing that you two are doing, or a great opportunity that you're doing for the engineering community, because like I said, I think a lot of times we forget how important that is for the sound, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then even like beyond the mastering, physical, changing the sound of the song, in a true mastering room, that's actually where you learn how to make your money. And that's why there's not that many me running around in the whole industry. When you look at it, you pick up an average CD, no matter who it is, you could have 50 producers and 100 mix engineers or whatever on there, but you're gonna always have one mastering engineer. And it's because it's that guy that helps make the labels their money.
Right.
So it's always been kind of odd to me if I'm like, hey, I can help you. I know what this is. Let's get this thing together. It's just kind of funny sometimes how you get kicked back like, nah, man, I ain't worried about that. I just want to be seen and be heard.
Yeah.
And I would always say, well, even though you're not concerned about the money that actually makes you greedy, what happens to mom if she has to go to the hospital? Or what happens to your kids that are growing up?
Right.
Do it for them.
Right.
And then, like you said, you can just be seen and be heard and at least have something set up to leave your kids. Like, don't go through because this is a business.
Mm-hmm.
So don't go through this business just popping bottles and turn up because you get older, not younger.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to see the 50-year-old dude in the club popping bottles,
We don't. We want to see the
Sammy does.
I do not want to see the 50-year-old man in the club. I wanted to ask you, though, because you spoke about family, and you have a family, of course, but you work a lot of hours. I've seen you here for many, many, many hours. I'm just like, Kenny, you still here? Yes. How do you balance, or how have you balanced having a family and, spending time with your family and your personal life too?
Right. Well, I guess I can say this, but it actually goes across the board with all the engineers here.
Mm-hmm.
It is brutal. It ain't fun. You know what I mean? So I think all of us have had our moments. As a matter of fact, if you talk to any of us, all of us have gone through that relationship where the girl's like, man, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? That type of deal, because it's brutal. It's a lot of long hours, like I said. It's just one of those deals to where if you're in a relationship, then hopefully you're with somebody that understands type of deal. So at least I'm in that predicament,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if not,
no.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, away with that.
Yeah, and I get it. So on my end, whereas I used to be like full blown, Monday through Sunday, every day. So now I take the weekends off, like just purpose. A lot of times I'll take the weekends off and turn my phone off because I get it. That's when I get a bulk of a lot of phone calls. And it's not a thing where I just want to go, I just need to ignore everybody. It's just a thing of where it's like, business is handled on the weekdays. And business is like, in other words, I used to always get told by my teacher, checks don't get cut after 5 o'clock. And I remember sitting, it was kind of funny now that I'm thinking about it. I remember sitting there, we were mastering songs or whatever, right? And like clockwork, I could be sitting there like, yeah, I'm mastering this song. 5 o'clock come, the lights start cutting off, I'm turning around like, yo, what we doing? I'm like, man, ain't no checks cut after 5 o'clock.
That's funny. That's true. That's very true. It's good to give yourself that personal time. I think that's a lot of times with, especially engineers, artists, producers, anybody listening, we got to find the balance.
Yeah.
Find the balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, I know you got to get to work today, but I do appreciate you giving us your time to talk about all there is to know about being Chief Mastering Engineer, as well as just, handling your business.
Right.
But you got to tell them where to follow you on social media.
Cool. Actually, everything's the same. All of my stuff is just at KennyMixx, KennyMixx. So it's 2 X's. So you can find me on Instagram at KennyMixx, Facebook at KennyMixx, that type of deal. You know what? I'm glad you asked me that, because that's something else you guys need to know. If you guys are setting up your businesses, stop making everything so damn abstract different. Mm-hmm. Like, in other words, your Instagram and your Facebook, your Twitter, they should all look cohesively the same, so we can find you. And if you're an artist or mix engineer or whatever, and you're trying to get into what we're doing, don't set up an Instagram and put it on private.
Right.
You know what I mean? If that makes any sense to you guys.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, so follow me on those are my social media spots.
You have a website?
Not yet.
No. Okay.
I'm working on it, guys.
Okay.
So I can try to help make sense out of all this for everybody. But you can always reach me here at the studio, Monday through Friday, like I said. The number here is 404-874-9880. And then on my end, if somebody was trying, submit songs to me or whatever for mastering, it actually goes through the front office. So like the system that we have set up, which is actually pretty cool and it actually helps you guys out. The reason why it goes to that front office first is because we have it set up because we're trying to help you establish a business. So in other words, who mixed it, who produced it, who recorded it, who owns it, where the copyrights go, all this stuff. Of course, in the streets, everybody go, oh man, don't go to Patchwork. We can do the same thing, which is fine. I don't knock all of that. That's fine. But I'm just saying here, we're trying to help you establish a business. So that's why we have stuff like the Foundation Media.
Which is your distribution, for those that don't know.
Yep, that's the distribution. And then we register for you guys, the media-based sound exchange, and so forth. We have graphics if you need graphics for your CDs, vocal coaching, and that's another service that especially you guys out there just trying to like some nice R&B or whatever, vocal coaching is actually good because some of the fad songs are kind of slowly dying out to where everybody sounds like the T-Pain effect. I mean, we get thousands of records like that, but it's kind of slow. It's dying out now, so it's about that time to get back with a vocal coach. If you're trying to do R&B, you don't want to sound like a scratch and a cat's tail being pulled or something.
That's an interesting way to describe it. Yeah, we offer a number of services at Patchwork, so definitely check those out and get at Kenny if you need some consulting or just mastering in general, because that's what he's doing Monday through Friday. Don't you forget it. But follow KennyMixx, and as always, you can follow me on social media at Sammy Approved. And thank y'all for tuning in to the Audio Music Podcast.
Nice.
Yes. All right.
Sonically superior.